here's a question. What are some of the best book club reads that you've had? Not necessarily some of the best books you've read as part of a book club, but what books have provided a really interesting discussion? I really enjoy being part of book clubs, not just because of the excitement of reading a book together rather than all on my lonesome and how it gives some structured social time, since I'm more of an introverted person and spend a lot of time on my own, but because everyone brings so many interesting different points of view and interpretation to the books that we read that I find it so fruitful and interesting and really expands my appreciation and understanding of a book, even if I personally didn't enjoy that book so much. So I want to talk about some of the best book club reads that I have had, and because I woke up this morning and realized that it is the 1 year anniversary of the online book club that I started exactly a year ago through Patreon, and we have had so many great reading experiences and discussions around a number of books. So I want to talk about a lot of these and why I think they are such good book club experiences, even if, some of them are really great and are some of my favorite books from the past year, but not all of them are necessarily, I think, great books in themselves. Some of them, weren't my favorites, but were so interesting to discuss together. So I'll put a link in the description below if you want to look at my book club and consider joining if you're not a member already. But yeah, we have a really lively and interesting community, a really great group that bring from all around the world that bring so many different points of view and perspectives to what we're reading. Our next book club choice is going to be Rachel Kushner's Creation Lake in September, which is currently longlisted for the Booker Prize and might be shortlisted. And so the structure is that we'll, especially if it's a longer book, we'll read it over a number of weeks. We'll have set reading times and sort of check in with each other about how we're reading and enjoying the book at that time. And it's another wonderful thing about book clubs that you can do this kind of checking in, rather than just reading the book in its entirety and then letting people know what you think of it. But having this time to say oh, I wonder what's going to happen next, and this is something I'm finding about the book, and I'm really not enjoying this and not sure I want to continue on with it, or I'm completely riveted and want to read to the end. And so the structure of the book club is that we'll have these discussions week by week on the Patreon page, but then there's also a dedicated private Discord channel where we can discuss the books if the readers do want to read ahead and discuss it right then, and we can blank out any spoilers for people so that it's not spoiled, but can kind of check in with each other about our reading progress in that way as well as having many other bookish discussions on the Discord group, but then having longer dedicated discussions about the book on the Patreon page. So that's the kind of structure on it unless it's a very short book, and then we might just discuss it over the course of 1 week. So I'm going to go through and discuss some of the choices from the past year that I think have made really great book club discussions, and that I've found so fascinating to read as part of a group. So one of the first books we read together is The Bee Sting by Paul Murray, which is a very long novel, and a lot happens in this book. There are a number of different characters in this family and a number of plot developments. There are so many cliffhangers throughout this book, and making it really tense and suspenseful to read. And so as we were reading it alongside each other, we were discussing these characters a lot, this family a lot, and a lot of the issues and themes that the novel raises as a whole. And of course, once we got to that ending, and there was so much discussion about the ending and how people felt about it, how they interpreted it, because that is a book that can have so many different interpretations. Just at the start of the winter season, we read The Vaster Wilds by Lauren Groff, and this novel was so great to read at this time of year, because obviously you can read books at any time of the year, but I think there's a special pleasure in reading them when it's kind of seasonally appropriate because it kind of adds to the atmosphere and feeling of the book. And The Vaster Wilds is such an atmospheric novel, and there's so many interesting things about it, about regarding like history, and so a lot of the readers were giving some information about the history that's involved in it, in early American history, but also following this character and her development, and her the real terror and fear that she experiences setting out on her own into the wilderness, and a lot of us discuss some of our favorite scenes in this book because there are some very vivid and striking and emotional scenes in this novel, especially the whole sea voyage that's depicted in it is an absolutely riveting scene, and so it was really great to read this all together, at that time of year. Reading the novel Northwoods together as a group is a really great experience because this is a novel with so many different characters, since it mainly follows a house over a long period of time, over multiple decades and centuries even, as we follow the many different inhabitants of this house, but also how there's an accumulation of memory and the presence of these characters over time. And since there are so many different characters and different styles of writing in this book, it was really interesting discussing as a group some of our favorite characters and scenes, and the way that Daniel Mason composed this, and how we have to kind of reorientate ourselves to what we expect from a plot when you're following a central character of a house rather than any particular character. But also how this novel raises a lot of interesting things concerning American history, but also the environment. One of my favorite reading experiences that we've had together as a book club, and one of the best books that I've read so far this year, is My Friends by Hisham Matar, which I keep talking about, and which is currently longlisted for the Booker Prize. And this was so fascinating to discuss together, as it goes into it depicts some real historical events, and so a lot of people in the group were commenting upon that, and the workings of that, but also how it depicts the characters and the structure of the friendship group, and larger themes about literature and art, and our connection with each other, and our relationship to our nationality and homeland, and so we had a lot of deep and interesting discussions about this together, but also on a number of other elements of the book, like just the cover itself, and this UK cover, and what this might say about the contents of the novel, and what it might be saying about the different characters. James was kind of a bonus book club choice for us when I realized that it wasn't going to be able to fit into the normal reading schedule for our book club, but we had a great discussion about this because obviously this builds off from a piece of classic American literature, and a number of people in our group had very different experiences of this, of either hadn't read that earlier book by Mark Twain at all, or some had read it a really long time ago, or some had read it really recently. And I think our interpretation and understanding of this book really changed because of these different experiences, and so it was really fascinating to hear how everyone responded to it based on these different things. But also this has a really engaging episodic plot to it, and so it was fascinating to discuss different scenes of it, but also some surprises, especially towards the end of the book, that are revealed about the character of Jim. Caledonian Road was another fascinating book to read together because it was another big, long book with a lot of characters, and so there was much to discuss about this book. I mean, it was kind of almost impossible to discuss every storyline and thread in the book, so a lot of the readers in our group sort of picked and choose some different scenes or different characters to talk about, which provided so much fruitful discussion. But also, since I'm lucky enough to live in London, I took the opportunity to go out and film Caledonian itself and some of the surrounding area and some of the locations that are depicted in the novel, because this is very much a London novel with so many different parts of the city depicted, but also especially this one concentrated area. So I created a video for the group, like showing this for people that don't live in London or haven't visited it before, to be able to see this area, which has been going through a rapid period of change in the past few years. And so, yeah, this was really fascinating book to discuss all together. We do often discuss a number of books that are currently nominated for different book prizes, and one of the books that was longlisted for the Women's Prize for Fiction this year was And Then She Fell. And this definitely wasn't one of my favorite books that I've read so far this year, but it was really interesting to read together as part of a group. And honestly, I don't think I would have continued reading this book if I wasn't reading it as part of this group. But I'm so glad that I finished it and read it, because the ending is especially fascinating, and I was encouraged to continue reading it on by some of the book club members that had got to a certain point and said, no, you need to read on to this point. And so I was so glad to be encouraged to do so, and yeah, had really fascinating discussion about it, because this is a novel that raises so many different themes and has so many different issues going on with it. Following a woman who is a wife and a mother who is really struggling with mental health issues and a feeling of separation from her Indigenous community, but also has lots of other things going on in her life. And so, yeah, it creates this real feeling of claustrophobia and panic. And so I was finding it quite difficult to read. But then at a certain point in the book, there is a change and a shift in it, which was so fascinating and imaginative. And for me personally, I know it didn't work for everyone in our book club, but it really brought the emotional resonance of the book home to me. As many of you probably know, Joyce Oates is my favorite author, and because she had a new novel out this year, we were able to read it together as part of the book club, even though some book club members opted out of reading this book because it is one of her more violent, vividly violent books. And that can, for if you're a bit squeamish, then you might find it difficult to read this book, since it depicts experimental operations in a lot of detail, but was also really fascinating to discuss together, because there are a lot of layers in it about like history and about misogyny and divisions in American society, and so yeah, it was great to talk about a lot of these larger themes, and for some members of the group that worked, and for some it really didn't work, and so yeah, there were a real wide variety of opinions about this book, but also about the characters and the story itself, and especially where it goes towards the end of the book, which it has quite a controversial ending, which a lot of different readers in our group had different opinions about. Even though we primarily read contemporary fiction together, we also have read some classics. So we read together Virginia Woolf's The Waves, which is my personal favorite novel of all time, and this was wonderful to read together as part of a group, for me personally, but also I think the group found it really interesting as well, because I have reread this novel like countless times, and so reading it together as part of a group really gave me new insight and understanding to it that I hadn't thought of before, in different ways of approaching the novel that I hadn't considered. It is very poetic in its language and sort of experimental in its structure, but that definitely didn't work for everyone in our group, and some readers in our group really didn't get along with it, but others found it really encouraging to read it together as part of a group, because it is quite a challenging book to read, and so reading it together and discussing some lines and some characters and some themes that are discussed in the book, I think really helps broaden a lot of readers' appreciation of it. But then, yeah, of course, as for myself included, having read and reread this book so many times. And we read together E.M. Forster's A Passage to India, which is celebrating like a 100-year anniversary this year. And so it made for such a great book club discussion, because this is a classic which has been read and interpreted so many different times, but reading it together, we got a real like personal appreciation of its story and the characters together. And I'd read it once, like early in my 20s, so like a long time ago, and so now coming to it now with so having had so many different experiences in my life, and a better like understanding of the world and history and colonialism, I had much bigger appreciation of this novel reading it this time around. And we discussed so many of those themes together as a group, and but also, since it was written a long time ago, whether there are some things about it which are slightly antiquated, or was E.M. Forster like being quite revolutionary in what he was doing at the time. I mean, I think he was, but we had really interesting discussion surrounding that. And most recently we read another novel from the current Booker Prize long list of The Safekeep, and this was great to read together. Lots of different perspectives and points of view on this novel, and because it begins with a character who is for most readers like a really unlikable person, in that she is she's very rude to a lot of people that she meets, and in her interactions with people, but is also so like guarded in herself. So there's a compelling mystery at the center of this book, and there are twists and turns in the plot, and and how this gets into the history and the aftermath of World War II, but also presents so many layers to the characters of the novel, that it gave a lot of great discussion and made a fantastic book club read. So I would really recommend reading all of these books if you're looking for a good book for your book club, and one that'll give a lot of juicy discussions. Then I'd suggest some of these books, but I'd love to know about some of your favorite book club reads as well. Please let me know about those in the comments. And of course, if you're keen on trying out my own book club and joining us in discussing these books, check out the link in the description below and consider joining. There's a number of different tiers with different benefits, and you'll see all that when you go to the page. But I hope you're doing well and reading good things, and I'll speak to you again soon. Bye bye.